In the beginning of my career, I didn't really understand how promotions work.
I like the cut of your jib.
What's a jib?
Promote that man.
Why some people got promoted very quickly and other people, even though they did a great job at what they were doing, did not get promoted at all or just very slowly. Luckily, in my first job as a management consultant at McKinsey, I had a mentor who gave me a really good piece of advice. And it sounds quite simple, but most people are not really actively implementing that into their career. And that piece of advice was, well, Simon, it's not enough if you do your current job well or even perfectly. What you need to demonstrate to your boss, to your leadership, is that you already have the skills and the know-how available right now that you need to perform well in your next role. And it makes sense from a risk management perspective, right? If they promote you and you're not able to perform well in that next role, it's going to hurt the company, and it's also going to hurt their reputation because they recommended someone for promotion that was not ready. So to take the example of my first job at McKinsey as an associate consultant, already 6 to 9 months before the promotional window to the next position, senior associate, was coming up, my mentor and I were discussing which kind of skill sets does a senior associate need to have, and which of those skills do I already have right now, and which ones do I need to work on, and most importantly, also demonstrate to the partners of the company of McKinsey in order for them to be able to promote me. So how does that practically look like for you? How do you understand which kind of knowledge or skill sets you need for the next role? And then how do you make sure that you learn those and implement them and also demonstrate them properly? Let's start with the first step. How do you identify which kind of knowledge or skill sets you need in order to progress into your next role? If you're working in a larger company where processes are more established and roles are also already well defined, you can look at people who are already working in the position that you would like to be promoted into. What is their daily work looking like? Also, do they have any skill sets that they demonstrate in their work? And you can, for example, observe that during meetings, also by directly asking them, that you at this current point in time don't have. What you can also do is to work together with your mentor. I've made a separate video on how to find and also engage with your mentor. If you haven't watched that yet, I've put the link into the description below. Watch it as well. So work together with your mentor or also your direct boss and ask them specifically what kind of knowledge or skill sets that you would need for the next role are you still lacking, and then also work with them on tangible ways on how you can improve that. For example, if it's a communication issue or if you, for example, need a certain programming language, let's say, then work on tangible ways on how you can improve that together with them. And don't be shy to actually ask directly, because that shows that you are invested in the company, that you are invested in the path, and you want to develop within the company. So it's actually a positive thing to really seek direct feedback from your supervisor. It's not something you should be afraid or shy of. And if you're working in a smaller company, for example, a startup where those roles are not really defined, where maybe the role that you want to be promoted into doesn't really exist even yet, a good thing that I would recommend you to do is to think, what would generate really value for the company? What skill set could you learn? What work could you do on a daily level that would bring the most value to the company and that is currently outside of your scope of work that you're not doing yet? Maybe even teaching other colleagues about skills or knowledge that you've acquired and then mentoring them. And this way you not only generate value and you show initiative, which is always good, but you also essentially create a space that you can get promoted or develop into yourself. So as you can see, it's very much dependent on your company, on the position that you have currently, on the skills that you already have available. And that's why in my mentoring program, I'm actually sitting down with young engineers and tailor to their specific situation what kind of skill set and knowledge they need to develop in order to progress to the next role. So if that mentoring program seems interesting for you, just drop an email or write a comment in the video below. Let's discuss the next step. How do you actually execute once you identify what kind of skill sets you need in order to progress to the next role? And I know that can be very demanding to do alongside your actual job, because you have a full-time job that can be very demanding, and on top of that, you already have to learn the skills that you need for the next role, right? I remember how it was in my case in my first job at McKinsey. I was working 13, 14, sometimes 15-hour days regularly, and then on top of that, I had to think about what kind of skill sets do I need to learn to progress to, for example, senior associate or engagement manager position. And the first piece of advice I want to give to you there is to already, as much as you can, choose work and supervisors and colleagues and projects that, while you're doing your actual job, help you already develop the skill sets that you need. So to give you an example from my personal experience, in my first job as an associate at McKinsey, one of the feedbacks was to take more ownership about a certain work stream. Obviously not the full project, but to pick a certain work stream that's isolated in itself conclusive, and then take ownership and responsibility for it from the start all the way to the finish. So in order to learn that skill, I then chose my next project by talking to the project manager and saying, hey, my feedback was that I need to work on a certain substream, on a working package that I'm most responsible for, that not multiple people are working on, but that I really focus on, that I'm responsible for. Does the project that you're proposing me to join allow me to really isolate a package, or is it really a project where everyone's working on everything? Then that probably wouldn't be so well suited, right? And if it is a project where I can have my own work package, I'm quite new to this. Do you have the time, and do you also want to mentor me and really give me the guidance in order to develop that skill set? Because your project manager or your boss already knows, and he already has those kind of skill sets that you need, because he went through the whole process himself. So really have that mentorship and also that buy-in from the person that they want to mentor you in that project is really important. And that helped me a lot, because then I was choosing a couple projects where I really had the opportunity to work on an isolated work stream, and it was really hard, honestly, right? But then I also got the buy-in from the project managers that really mentored me and said, hey, Simon, you did that well, but I recommend you to do it this way. Or I could always come to him and ask him, I propose to do it this way. Do you have any alternative solutions, or what do you think about that, right? So taking responsibility, but also being able to collect the feedback in a proper manner from the project manager. So I understand that's a bit more difficult to implement in an actual industrial role, right? I'm in industry right now myself, so I understand it's not as easy, because you can't, for example, maybe choose the projects that you're working on, or the colleagues or the bosses. But as much as you can, I would recommend you to really put yourself into an environment where, while you're doing your actual job, you're learning the specific skill that you and your mentor, you and your boss have identified. That's why it's actually really helpful if you talk about that with your boss, because then he can make sure that he, for example, gives you work that helps you develop that skill set, right? So make them aware of it. But then on top of all of that, I recommend you, and I had a great experience with that myself, to really take some time after work every single day to, by yourself, develop a certain skill set that you have identified that you need for progressing to your next position. And there's a great quote, I think it was from Bill Gates. He said that most people really overestimate what they can do in 1 year or in a very short amount of time, but they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. So the moral of the quote essentially is, if you do a small amount of effort, but you do it consistently and regularly, you'll be surprised how quickly you can actually learn something new, how quickly you can actually progress. And I know that sounds easier than it is actually, because especially if you have a very demanding job, to then isolate another hour, or even if it's just 20 minutes every day for working on an additional skill set, it's difficult, but it's certainly doable. And you will be surprised what the impact is in the run of your career, because it's very difficult to notice a 1% progression over a short amount of time, but it's becoming very noticeable over a longer period of time. And I really recommend you do that. That's a game changer. That's really differentiating the people who are great, who progress really fast, who contribute a lot of value, and in turn are also given a lot of opportunities, between the people that are just progressing at maybe an average or even sub-average rate. So I really encourage you to start that early on, so you really profit from that compound effect, and to also make room in your schedule, and also to write yourself a plan of what particularly you want to learn, when you're going to do it, and how you're going to do it. Because the less specific and the more vague you are, the less likely you're going to be to actually do it, right? To execute. So that planning is really key. And let me know if you want to have a more detailed video on how to actually do that. Let me know in the comments below, and I'm happy to do that. And I've also linked you in the video description 3 other videos that are really highlighting 3 more things that are very important in order to progress in your career, to get promoted. That is 1, visibility, check that video out. It's very important. It's how your leadership is perceiving you. Second, ownership. That's what I already discussed as a feedback that was given to me. And I made a video on that as well. It's really important to become a successful engineer, to take ownership over your work. And the third one is to find a strong mentor that is really guiding you and opening doors for you and helping you to progress along. So all those 3 videos are linked in the description. I would recommend you to watch them, and see you in the next video. Cheers.